The bombs that fell on Christmas Day were not the ending. They were the opening scene. What happened on December 25, 2025, now looks less like an isolated military action and more like a warning shot. A signal. And now, weeks later, Donald Trump has dropped a statement so explosive that it has Abuja on edge and Nigerians everywhere asking one chilling question: is our country being positioned as the next US battleground? This is not clickbait. This is not exaggeration. This is a direct message from the White House itself. We are bringing you this update today, Tuesday, February 3, 2026, because the situation is evolving fast, and the consequences could redefine Nigeria's sovereignty in ways we haven't seen in decades. Let's rewind. When US fighter jets struck targets in Nigeria's northwest on Christmas Day, the Nigerian government moved quickly to control the narrative. Officials told us it was a joint operation. They said Nigeria provided intelligence. They framed it as cooperation between allies, not foreign aggression. The message was clear: we are still in charge. But then came Donald Trump's interview with the New York Times, and everything changed. When asked whether the airstrikes were over, Trump didn't sound like a partner. He didn't sound like someone seeking permission. He sounded like a man issuing a threat. "I'd love to make it a one-time strike," he said, "but if they continue to kill Christians, it will be a many-time strike." Pause. Read that again. A many-time strike. That is not diplomatic language. That is a promise of repeated military action on Nigerian soil, decided in Washington, not Abuja. For the first time, the US president openly framed future airstrikes as punishment, not cooperation. And the justification: religious violence, specifically, the killing of Christians. It didn't stop there. When Trump was told that Muslims are also victims of violence in Nigeria, he brushed it aside. "I think Muslims are being killed also in Nigeria," he said, "but it's mostly Christians." With that sentence, a dangerous line was drawn. What this tells us is terrifyingly simple: future US military actions in Nigeria may no longer depend on Nigerian approval, intelligence sharing, or military coordination. They may depend solely on America's own assessment of religious violence inside our borders. Let me ask you something, honestly. Does this make you feel protected or exposed? Does this feel like help or the first step toward losing control of our own country? Because history is not on our side here. We've seen what happens when foreign powers begin limited strikes in the name of protection. Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan. It always starts with moral outrage and ends with chaos, power vacuums, and nations that never fully recover. Now look at the position this puts the Nigerian presidency in. Foreign Minister Yusuf Togga and other officials have been working overtime to sell the Christmas strikes as collaborative. They have to. Admitting that a foreign power is bombing Nigerian territory without full control would be political suicide. It would make the government look weak, helpless, compromised. But Trump's words blow a hole straight through that cover story. By framing the strikes as retaliation for Nigeria's failure to protect Christians, Trump is essentially accusing the Nigerian state of failing its most basic duty, protecting its citizens. And that accusation, coming from a US president, is not just insulting, it's a justification for intervention. Then there's the issue of the targets. The US claimed the Christmas strikes hit ISIS-linked terrorists and pointed to a group called Lakurawa operating in the northwest. But security analysts are asking uncomfortable questions. Who exactly was killed? Where is the independent verification? Why Lakurawa, a relatively new and obscure group, over more established threats like Boko Haram or ISWAP? Some critics believe this is less about strategic counterterrorism and more about symbolism. A narrative that plays well to Trump's domestic base in America, a protector of Christians, crusade that turns Nigeria into a talking point in US culture wars. And that's where the real danger lies. Because once airstrikes become frequent, many-time strikes, mistakes become inevitable. What happens when the wrong target is hit? When civilians die? When villages are flattened based on faulty intelligence. We know this story. Civilian deaths breed anger. Anger breeds radicalization. Radicalization breeds more violence. And suddenly, the problem the strikes were meant to solve becomes 10 times worse. Even more explosive is the religious framing of this intervention. By singling out Christians as the primary victims worthy of U.S. military protection, Washington risks pouring fuel on Nigeria's already fragile religious balance. In the North, this could easily be interpreted as the West waging a religious war, Christian versus Muslim, regardless of the reality on the ground. That perception alone could destabilize entire regions. Meanwhile, reports suggest the Nigerian government has hired U.S. lobbying firms, signing contracts worth $9 million, in a desperate attempt to soften Washington's stance and reshape the narrative. But here's the brutal question. Can you lobby your way out of airstrikes? The coming weeks will tell us everything. Will President Tinubu draw a clear line and assert Nigeria's sovereignty? Or will U.S. drones quietly become a permanent presence in our skies, normalized, unquestioned, unstoppable? This is no longer just about terrorism. It's about control. It's about who decides what happens inside Nigeria's borders. We'll keep watching the skies. And we'll keep watching the headlines. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you see this as protection or a dangerous overreach? Are you calm or deeply worried? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it, because silence, right now, is the most dangerous option of all.